this quick video and title it rather provocatively, Single Malts versus Blends, Let the Battle Commence. But that title is really just clickbait for people that flicking through YouTube and see that title and click on it, because I believe that the battle between single malts and blended whiskies is a load of rubbish. It's absolute nonsense, and it does the whiskey industry a disservice. There are scores of YouTube channels which give whiskey reviews, and a lot of the reviewers, not all, there's some great whiskey reviewers out there, but a lot of them seem to concentrate on single malts, and they display an arrogance, a snobbery towards blended whiskies that will put off newcomers to the drink, that will really it'll just put them off. You know, they'll think, they'll feel ignorant because they don't understand the drink. They'll feel that their palate is not as well developed as the so-called whiskey experts, because they can't pull the flavours out of thin air that some whiskey experts pull out. I mean, you see, I'm drinking by a Grant's triple wood blended scotch on the rocks, so that's over ice, and right now I can see whiskey purists stopping this video and going on to find something else, some review of some £955 a bottle single malt whiskey, limited edition, and thinking that I'm just ignorant and I don't know what I'm talking about. But the fact is that the Grant's triple wood, there's nothing wrong with it. And blended whiskey makes up a massive proportion of the whiskey market. If it wasn't for blended whiskies, there wouldn't be any whiskey market, because the single malt distilleries, and there are, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking single malts, there are some superb single malts out there, but there are also some superb blends, there's some superb single grain whiskies. It's all a load of nonsense. You see these reviewers, and they take their whiskey to the nose, and they say leather. Now, if I had a whiskey that tasted like leather, I'd be straight on the phone to customer services and saying, hey, this whiskey you've just sold me, it tastes like leather, I'd like to have my money back. But you can pull out flavours from whiskies. You can pull out chocolate, you can pull out citrusy, you can pull out bitter taste, you can pull out sweeter taste, honey. These tastes are in whiskey, because whiskey is a totally complex drink. But some of these people just take it too far, you know. They're saying leather, three virgins running through a field, one of whom has got an elastoplast on her left foot. That's just bullshit.
The Woodsman whiskey loves a doer, so don't dilly-dally, do. And do what those that do when they're done doing. The Woodsman whiskey, well earned.
It's just bullshit. Now, firstly, and I talk about this in my forthcoming book, A Dark History of Whiskey, and there should be a picture floating up around you on the screen somewhere, telling you that you can pre-order the book now from Amazon. You can also pre-order it direct from the publishers at Pen and Sword Book. Waterstones have it listed. Bookerly have it listed. It's listed on a lot of websites at the moment, but its actual publication is the 28th of February rather, 2025, so that's not too far off. But let me read you a little bit from my whiskey tasting notes that sit at the end of the book, A Dark History of Whiskey, when I talk about blended whiskies. So let me just read this to you. Okay, so this is chapter 14 of the book. It's called Let's Taste Whiskey and Throw in Some Mixer. So even the purists now, who just now were being annoyed that I was starting to compare blends with single malts, are now in a state of apoplexy, because I'm now saying let's drink whiskey as a mixer. But the fact is, you should drink whiskey how you like it. Take it with ice over the rocks, as I generally do. I mean, I do take whiskey totally neat, no water, no ice, but that's only for the initial tasting. If I'm reviewing a new whiskey, I do that. But when I'm sitting in the back of an evening and enjoying a dram, I generally take it over the rocks. That's a single malt, or a blend, or a bourbon, or a Japanese whiskey, or any of the other whiskies I drink. And I do vary my whiskey drinking, because I consider myself something of a whiskey aficionado, if not a connoisseur, because I've never tasted leather in a whiskey. I get charcoal sometimes, I get smoke. But let me just redo this bit from chapter 14 of The Dark History of Whiskey. I promised earlier that this book would contain tasting notes, and here they are. However, these are not the standard tasting notes that can be found in many other whiskey books that are out there. And there are many, nor is this a selection of what I consider the best whiskies. That would be a book in itself. Instead, I have limited the tastings to a select few whiskies with several rules for inclusion. Firstly, they must be easily available and, most importantly, affordable. I see no use in extolling the virtues of a hugely expensive and extremely rare single malt if most of us will never get to experience it. Likewise, the limited editions that have collectors rushing for their credit cards are beyond the brief of this book. There are tasting notes, these are tasting notes for the everyman, the whiskey enthusiast who demands quality on a budget and isn't easily bamboozled by fancy advertising and outlandish claims. So basically, what I'm saying here is that I drink a fair few single malt whiskies, but some single malt whiskies, the clever marketing and the snobbery of certain whiskey reviewers have allowed these whiskies to be vastly overpriced. When they get to the market, they cost absolutely mammoth amounts when they don't really deserve it. I'm sorry for taking a vape there, but stopped me smoking for the last 5 years, 6 years coming up in February, and I was an heavy smoker. Also, it makes a cool effect when I'm reviewing a smoky whiskey, because watch this. There we are. This whiskey is damn smoky. But the point is, what is the difference between a single malt, a blended whiskey, and a single grain whiskey? Well, a single malt whiskey is actually a blended whiskey, only it's not called blended when they do it for single malts, because a single malt whiskey will be several single malts, but all from the same distillery. That's what defines a single malt, and that's defined under law, under the Scotch whisky regulations, but it's still a blended whisky, because it'll be a malt taken from 2 or 3 different casks and blended together. They call it vatting, because they don't want to call it blending, because it sounds too close to a blended whisky. But basically, unless you get a single cask single malt, then the single malts that you buy, that you pay way too much for by and large, not always, but by and large, are blended or vatted together. So they'll come from 2 or 3 different casks. Yes, they're all produced by the same distillery, but they are vatted together, blended together. Now, as opposed to a blended whisky, now a blended whisky can contain single malts from several different distilleries. It can also contain some grain whisky from several different distilleries, and these are all blended together. They don't call it vatting here because they're not as pretentious, but it's all blended together to create a consistent flavour profile. That's why you can buy a bottle of Famous Grouse today, and then you can buy a bottle of Famous Grouse in 3 years' time, and it'll taste exactly the same. Blending is an art form. And the absurdity of the single malts versus blended whiskey argument is that one day a master distiller can spend his day vatting, which is blending, different casks from the same distillery to create a single malt whiskey, and the following day he's blending whiskies from different distilleries, including grain whiskey, though not always, because something like Monkey Shoulder, of course, is a blended malt whiskey, which contains nothing but malt whiskies, but it's malt whiskies from different distilleries, whereas the standard blended whiskies that you see on the shelves, the Famous Grouses, the Johnny Walkers, the Grant's Triple Wood, are a mixture of single malts, grain whiskies, and they marry together to create a consistent flavour profile. So I don't think that the argument of single malts versus blended whiskies is an argument at all. I don't think it should exist. Now, some of the single malt distilleries are very pleased that this argument is raging on, and they're very pleased that these pretentious doombars, these bucketheads on Facebook and YouTube are rubbishing blended whiskies just because they want to appear cool. They want to appear knowledgeable. They want to appear better educated. They want their palates to be extolled as being of far greater quality to the likes of you and me, the everyman, the person who enjoys a whiskey, who likes to spend an evening with a dram. They like to appear better, more knowledgeable, and far more educated than us, and they're talking through their collective buttocks. And did I forget single grain whiskey? There are several really nice single grain whiskies out there. Single grain whiskies are whiskies that are blended together, vatted together from grain whiskey, so there's no malted whiskey in there, you know, but a lot of it is just semantics. And the facts are that the biggest proportion of the whiskey market, more than 90% of the whiskey market, are made up of blended whiskies. Now, the single malt thing, where you get these single malts which costs upwards of £100 for a bottle, I don't think they really justify that price tag. You can go to the budget supermarkets here in the UK, Lidl and Aldi, and they sell their own single malt whiskies. Benbrachen is the Lidl version, the Lidl single malts, and I think it's Glenmorangie, or it's Glen something, you'll have to excuse me for this, which is the Aldi version. But Benbrachen or the Aldi version are not real distilleries. So these are single malts purchased at the youngest allowed age, which is I was going to say usually then, but it's got to be by law 3 years and a day for Scotch whiskies. So the Benbrachen whiskey, which you get from Lidl's, that's the one that I've drunk far more than the Aldi's, which I want to say is called Glenmarnock. I'm sure it's Glenmarnock. But anyway, I've drunk a lot of Benbrachen. Benbrachen do an island, they do an Islay, and they do a Space side. Now, I've drunk the island, I think, and the Space side, but the Islay version, the Benbrachen Islay, which comes in a green bottle, I've drunk a lot of, because I do like smoky whiskey. Now, this is basically a 3-year-old whiskey from some unknown Islay distillery. Some people say it's Colilla. I don't know. But anyway, it's a damn decent whiskey. It's a single malt, and it costs in Lidl's at the moment about £18. You know, so who's the fool? The person who listens to the YouTube guy who's taken the whiskey to his nose and leather, apricots, 3 virgins running through a field on a dew-soaked morning. £95.65 a bottle, or the person who goes, some smoke, some fruit, maybe a little citrus, and it's £17 to £18 in Lidl. Who's the fool? But the fact is that blended whiskies are equal to single malts. Yes, there are some fantastic single malts out there, but single malts are very distinctive. They're very complex. But they tend to be a bit idiosyncratic by and large. Whereas blended whiskies can provide the flavours and the tastes and the experience that the everyman would prefer. I mean, I don't know if I'm a whiskey expert, but then what is a whiskey expert? I've been drinking whiskey for a great many years now, more than a decade, far more than a decade. I've drunk so many different whiskies. I couldn't name the amount of whiskies I've drunk. I've drunk single malts, I've drunk blends, I've drunk single grains, I've drunk a lot of bourbon. I went through a period where I was drinking nothing but bourbon. I love some of the bourbons out there, the American whiskies. I love Buffalo Trace, I love Wild Turkey, Eagle Rare, and oh my god, Evans Gate, just wow, it floored me. So I consider myself an experienced whiskey drinker, if not an expert, and if not a connoisseur. And I wouldn't pertain to be a connoisseur. I feel that it's gone on so long now that I don't get annoyed by these doombas, these buttock talking fools on do their reviews on Facebook, on YouTube, who do their reviews and pull out all these flavours out of a glass of whiskey, which I can't pull out. And I've been drinking whiskey for a great many years, you know, I can't pull out that, yes. So that's, now this Grant's Triple Wood that I'm drinking here, it's got the addition of ice, okay, so that does dilute the flavours somewhat. It cools the drink down, so it might subdue the aromas. That's what the single malt enthusiasts and the fools who say that the only way to drink whiskey is neat and with a grimace say. But it seems to me a foolish thing to try and extol the virtues of a drink and then limit the ways you can drink it. I believe you can drink whiskey any way you want to. You can drink it with ice, you can drink it with water, you can drink it with ginger ale, you can drink it with tea, you can drink it with coconut water, you can drink it with green tea. And I would recommend the book Whiskey the Manual by Dave Broom, the well-known whiskey expert Dave Broom, who gives he reviews several whiskies in the book. In fact, the book is nothing but whiskey reviews, and he reviews it straight, and then he reviews it with the various forms of mixers: ginger ale, green tea, coconut water, so forth, so forth. And he tells you what this seems to do to the drink. So I'm going to take this Grant's Triple Wood, which as far as I'm concerned is a decent blend. I drink a lot of blended Scotch whisky. I probably drink more blended Scotch whisky than any other type of whisky. And Grant's Triple Wood would be up there in the top 5 for me. Probably my favourite blended Scotch would be the famous Grouse Smoky Black. I really like that. But then I also like the Ben Bracken from Lidl, you know, so shoot me. But let me nose this Grant's Triple Wood and try and give you an honest opinion of the sensations I'm getting when I take this to the nose. Now bearing in mind I've got ice in here, okay, so it will subdue the flavours somewhat. So I'm getting cereal, I'm getting grain. I'm not getting smoke. Now that's a really tasty drink. The way I drink it, over ice, Scotch on the rocks. It's a classic drink, you know, you watch all those 1940s film noir and you see the gumshoe going into the bar and he says, Scotch on the rocks please. That's the way I drink it, that's the way I like it, and you should drink your own whiskey the way you like it. And you shouldn't fall for the single malts versus Scotch whisky thing. You shouldn't fall for the fallacy that many people extol that single malts are superior to blends, because that is, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna tell it like it is now, that is absolute fucking bullshit. There are some great single malts out there, some superb single malts out there. In terms of smoky whiskey, which is the flavour profile that I like the most, I love a Lagavulin. I love a Lafroig. In terms of bourbon, I love something like, I think Eagle Rare 10-year-old is probably my favourite because it's affordable. And when I want to treat myself, I go for an Eagle Rare because there are decent bourbons that are much cheaper than that, such as Buffalo Trace and Wild Turkey. Wild Turkey 101 is excellent. Buffalo Trace is excellent. In terms of blended Scotch whisky, as I say, I like the famous Grouse Smoky Black. I also like White Mackay, and a newer iteration, although it's been out a couple of years now, that comes from White Mackay is the Woodsman. The Woodsman is very good. Johnny Walker Black.
Our journey begins at Glenmore Distillery in Inverness, Scotland, where the original McKinley's rare old Highland malt was distilled well over 100 years ago.
I don't mind the
whiskey
Johnny
is
Walker
right.
Red, though I do prefer the Johnny Walker Black. There's just so many. White Horse, which is getting difficult to find these days, is a superb blended Scotch whisky. There are so many wonderful whiskies out there. But please, 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 and this is the point of this video, not only to promote my book, A Dark History of Whiskey, which is out February the 28th, 2025, so it's coming up now for a few months away. Please, 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 get onto Amazon and pre-order the book now, or get direct to the publisher's Pen and Soul book and pre-order the book, or do it from Waterstones or anywhere else books are sold. But it would be really cool if you do that. It's a whiskey book like no other, and it really is, because it tells the story of whiskey from its infancy, from the way it evolved, from distilled perfumes and so forth back in the days of antiquity, right up to the present day. But it also concentrates on a lot of the legends and the myths surrounding whiskey. And one of the wonderful things about whiskey drinking is sitting there with a few like-minded people enjoying a dram and telling stories of whiskey. And my book, A Dark History of Whiskey's got a lot of stories. We take in ghouls, we take in ghosts, we take in distillery cats, we even take in the devil on one or two instances, or maybe the giant, the legend of the giant, which is responsible for the creation, so legend tells us, of the Scottish drink, which is a kind of porridgey whiskey drink. So it's all in my book, A Dark History of Whiskey. So please enjoy your whiskey, enjoy your whiskey experience, and yes, do try as many single malts as you can, but don't fall for the bullshit that single malts are superior to blends, because they aren't. You know, you find something you like and don't stick with it. Experiment. The whiskey is such a complex, wide-ranging drink that to stick with one blend, or one single malt, or one single grain, or one bourbon, or one Japanese whiskey, oh my God, have you tasted Nika single barrel? That's wonderful. These days there are whiskies coming from Wales, Penderyn, Damyle, Amber Falls. There is whiskey coming from all over the world. Australia, India. The whiskey world is too small. Limit yourself to just drinking one type of whiskey because of a few so-called experts on Facebook and YouTube say that single malts are superior. So cheers, Solange. And please, if you enjoyed this video, or if you wanted to listen to my little rant there, then please click subscribe to this channel, because it'll help this channel grow. It doesn't cost you anything. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Let's talk. If you think I'm wrong, then let's talk of the differences between single malts and blends, and why you consider single malts to be better. If not, then please enjoy your whiskey. I know I do.